Another day, another story. The significance of Kurban in Islam. Introduction. Kurban is a significant religious ritual in Islam. It is observed annually by Muslims around the world during the Islamic month of Dhul-Hijjah. The act of Kurban involves the sacrifice of a domestic animal, usually a goat, sheep, cow, or camel, as an act of worship to Allah. The meat from the sacrificed animal is distributed among the poor, relatives, and friends, and a portion is kept for the family of the person who performed the sacrifice. The act of Kurban has deep spiritual and moral significance in Islam, and its observance is an essential part of Islamic tradition. In this essay, we will explore the significance of Kurban in Islam. Historical background of Kurban. The tradition of Kurban dates back to the time of the Prophet Ibrahim, as, in the Abrahamic faiths, Ibrahim was commanded by Allah to sacrifice his son, Ismail, as a test of faith. Ibrahim obeyed the command of Allah, but before he could carry out the sacrifice, Allah sent a ram to replace Ismail. This event is commemorated by Muslims through the observance of Kurban, which symbolizes the willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah. The significance of Kurban in Islam. Kurban is a significant act of worship in Islam. It is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and its observance is mandatory for every able-bodied Muslim who can afford it. The act of Kurban is a symbol of the willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah, and it demonstrates the submission of the believer to Allah's will. The act of Kurban is a reminder to Muslims of the importance of self-sacrifice, humility, and generosity. The act of Kurban also has significant moral and spiritual significance. The sacrifice of an animal is a symbol of the believer's willingness to give up something valuable for the sake of Allah. It is a reminder of the importance of sacrificing one's desires and personal interests for the greater good. It is also a reminder of the importance of gratitude, as the act of Kurban is a way of giving thanks to Allah for His blessings. In addition to its spiritual significance, Kurban also has important social and economic implications. The meat from the sacrificed animal is distributed among the poor, relatives, and friends, and a portion is kept for the family of the person who performed the sacrifice. This act of charity is an important way of caring for the less fortunate members of society, and it helps to strengthen social ties within the community. The act of Kurban also has important economic implications, as it provides a source of income for many people involved in the livestock industry. The observance of Kurban. The observance of Kurban is a complex ritual that involves several steps. The person performing the sacrifice must first select an appropriate animal, which must be healthy, free from defects, and of a certain age. The animal must be slaughtered by cutting its throat with a sharp knife, while the person recites a specific prayer. The meat from the animal is then divided into 3 parts. 1/3 is given to the poor, 1/3 is given to relatives and friends, and 1/3 is kept for the family of the person who performed the sacrifice. The observance of Kurban is not just a ritual, but a way of life for Muslims. It is an act of worship that requires commitment, sacrifice, and self-discipline. Muslims who observe Kurban are reminded of their duty to Allah and their responsibility to care for the less fortunate members of society. The act of Kurban is a way of strengthening the bond between the individual and the community, and it helps to promote unity and solidarity within the Muslim Ummah. Challenges to the observance of Kurban. Despite the importance of Kurban in Islam, there are several challenges to its observance. One of the main challenges is the rising cost of livestock, which makes it difficult for many Muslims to afford to perform the sacrifice. In some parts of the world, the demand for livestock during the month of Dhul-Hijjah is so high that prices are inflated, making it even more difficult for many Muslims to afford to perform the sacrifice. Another challenge is the issue of animal welfare. Some animal rights activists argue that the ritual slaughter of animals is cruel and inhumane, and they call for the abolition of the practice. However, Muslims argue that the ritual slaughter of animals is humane and painless, and that it is an important part of their religious tradition. Finally, there is the challenge of ensuring that the meat from the sacrificed animal is distributed to those in need. In some cases, the meat is not distributed fairly, and it ends up in the hands of the wealthy rather than the poor. This goes against the spirit of the Kurban ritual and undermines its social and economic benefits. Conclusion. In conclusion, Kurban is a significant religious ritual in Islam that has deep spiritual, moral, social, and economic significance. Its observance is mandatory for every able-bodied Muslim who can afford it, and it is an important way of demonstrating one's faith and commitment to Allah. Despite the challenges to its observance, Kurban remains an important part of Islamic tradition, and its observance helps to strengthen the bond between the individual and the community. As Muslims around the world observe Kurban this year, let us remember the importance of sacrifice, humility, and generosity, and let us work together to ensure that the meat from the sacrificed animal is distributed fairly to those in need. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more story.